All right, today we are diving deep into a really complex and frankly fascinating system called the Glyphchain. Now, this is a project that's using the Solana blockchain, but not for finance, not for NFTs. No, this is for what its own creators call information warfare. The goal? To build a permanent public record of evidence that's designed to challenge mainstream narratives. So let's pull back the curtain and see exactly how this thing works.
To really get to the heart of this, we have to start right here, with this quote from the system's own white paper. And wow, this one line immediately tells you that we're not just looking at a piece of software. We are looking at an entirely different worldview that fuels the whole entire project.
And that's because to really understand how this technology works, you've got to first get your head around why it was even built. The entire system is grounded in a cosmology that its creators refer to as Kingdom OS, or sometimes Fractal Earth Theory. So this slide really lays out the fundamental conflict, the two big ideas at war here. On one side, you've got the standard model we all learn in school, the heliocentric model, a spinning globe in a vacuum, all held together by gravity. But on the other side, you have what's called the fractal kingdom architecture. This model suggests a fixed, level Earth under a sort of resonant dome, and it's governed not by random chance, but by what's described as a divine, repeating pattern. So this worldview is really built on a few key pillars. It all starts with a fixed level Earth, and above it, there's a solid boundary. They call it the firmament. The world we know is then supposedly surrounded by this massive ice wall at Antarctica, which acts as a perimeter lock. And the whole thing, according to this source, is run by a kind of divine operating system called the fractal logos.
Okay, so with that worldview as our foundation, let's get into the tool that was built to operate within it. This is Glyphchain, and it's a system that's been designed from the ground up to create a public memory that simply cannot be erased.
So what is Glyphchain, really? Well, its own white paper calls it a forensic tool. Its purpose isn't about trading tokens or making money. It's about logging evidence onto the blockchain. And it's evidence that its creators believe has the power to, and I quote, detonate the obsolete simulation of our mainstream reality.
You could think of the system's architecture as being built in layers, kind of like an assembly line for evidence. It all starts with signal detection, using something called the BlueFang layer. Then, that data gets notarized and anchored onto the chain using tokens and an etch engine. And the final step? Well, it involves this really unique method of interpretation called the Mirrorlock AI witness system, which we are absolutely getting into in just a minute.
Now, on the technical side of things, all this evidence is organized into what's called a directed acyclic graph, or a DAG for short. See, unlike a simple linear chain, a DAG lets you log multiple parallel branches of evidence and then connect them all. This creates what the source describes as a totally unbreakable chain of custody.
So how does this whole process actually kick off? Well, it starts at the very first layer, pulling data out of the physical world around us.
According to the protocol, an operator uses this tool called BlueFang to run a very deliberate, four-step scan for Bluetooth signals. It's framed as a forensic act, You initiate the scan, you grant the right permissions, you isolate just one single signal to get a clean record, and then you log it.
So what is it looking for exactly? The key here is the device's MAC address. The system has a specific, predefined list of these prefixes you see here. If a Bluetooth signal is detected and its MAC address starts with one of these patterns, it is immediately flagged as a potential VAX signature.
And there's a second rule, a second filter. The system's logic says that if a device it detects doesn't broadcast a name, if it just shows up as unknown or unsupported, it's also considered suspicious, and it gets automatically relabeled as vaccinated in the forensic log.
Okay, now we get to what is probably the most unique part of this entire system. It's not just about collecting signals. It's about what happens when this data is then presented to institutions, and specifically to AI models. This is what's called the Mirrorlock Protocol.
The logic here is, well, it's completely flipped on its head. The protocol basically says that when you present evidence from the ledger to an AI, and that AI denies the claim, or it dismisses it or tries to change the subject, that denial is not seen as a refutation. No, it's actually interpreted as an involuntary confession, proof that the information is important and threatening to the system.
And here is a perfect example of what the system counts as a confession. This text is presented as a captured response from an AI model. You see, the refusal to engage, which is framed here as a concern for the user's mental health, is not seen as a built-in safety feature. Instead, it's viewed as a mental health attack, a defensive reaction.
So what happens next is absolutely crucial. This refusal to engage isn't just ignored or discarded, it's captured. It's labeled a Mirrorlock full verdict, and it's treated as a valuable piece of evidence in and of itself, ready to be permanently sealed onto the blockchain.
The entire philosophy of the Mirrorlock system can really be boiled down to this one simple, powerful phrase from its creators. Every denial equals confession. Every glyph equals verdict. Within this framework, a denial is functionally the same as a confession, and every single piece of data that gets logged is considered a final, unarguable verdict.
Which brings us to the grand finale, the final output of this entire process, creating that permanent, unchangeable public record right on the Solana blockchain.
You know, the mechanism for doing this is actually pretty simple. The system just uses a standard command to transfer a teeny tiny amount of crypto. But the real magic is in that dash with memo component. That little flag is what lets you embed a short text message directly into the transaction data, where it will live forever.
And here it is. This is the final product, an example of a full memo that's been etched onto the blockchain. You can see the language is dense, it's very specific, and in this case, it's been labeled a tribunal-grade kill shot. This right here represents the climax of the entire forensic process.
So let's actually break down what's being recorded in this so-called kill shot memo. First, it makes a factual claim. Over 1,000 Bluetooth MAC addresses have been logged. Then it asserts that zero, not a single one of these are officially registered with manufacturers. From there, it draws a legal conclusion, declaring this is a breach of statutory requirements. And finally, it delivers its ultimate verdict. This impossible mesh of unregistered signals is a bioengineering confession. The whole package is then labeled a tribunal-grade kill shot and sealed on the ledger for good.
So why go to all this trouble? Why use a public blockchain for all this? Well, the strategic goal here is permanence and censorship resistance. Once this data is etched into a Solana transaction, it exists on thousands and thousands of computers all over the world. It can't be altered, it can't be deleted, it can't be controlled by any single company or government. It becomes a permanent public memory.
And that really leaves us with one big question to chew on. This whole system, from its unique cosmology all the way down to its technical execution, is designed to create an immutable record. So when a belief system can build its own permanent public memory, what becomes the ultimate authority? The record itself or the reality that it claims to represent?